The dinner ended not with applause, but with a respectful, terrified silence. Valerius carried me out of the great hall, leaving the council to whisper amongst themselves. The nobles who had sneered at me an hour ago were now bowing so low their foreheads touched the cold stone floor. "You did well," Valerius whispered into my hair as we ascended the stairs to the royal wing. "Better than well. You were magnificent." I buried my face in his chest, the adrenaline finally crashing. My legs felt like jelly. "I was terrified," I admitted. "I didn't know I could do that. The wolf, she just took over." "She is protecting you," Valerius said, kicking open the door to our bedroom. "And so am I." He placed me gently on the massive bed. The room was dark, lit only by the embers in the fireplace. Outside, the moon hung heavy and full, watching over us. Valerius sat beside me, loosening his tie. He looked tired. The weight of the crown, the council, the threats, it was etched into the lines of his face. "Valerius," I reached out, touching his cheek. "Cassandra, she won't stop, will she?" He turned his head, kissing my palm. "Cassandra is a snake. Snakes strike when you aren't looking, but I will crush her head before she gets within a mile of you again." He stood up and walked to a side table. He poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. "Drink," he said, handing it to me. "You need to hydrate. The shifting took a lot out of you." I took the glass. The water was cool and refreshing. I drank it all in one go, grateful for the relief in my parched throat. "Thank you," I sighed, handing the glass back. Valerius stripped off his jacket and lay down beside me, pulling me into his arms. I rested my head on his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Sleep now, my queen," he murmured, stroking my hair. "Tomorrow we start planning the nursery. I was thinking blue for the boy?" I smiled, closing my eyes. "Blue sounds perfect. Maybe with some silver stars on the ceiling." My voice trailed off. A sudden cramp seized my stomach. It wasn't a kick. It wasn't the baby moving. It was a sharp, twisting pain, like a hot poker being driven into my gut. I gasped, my hand flying to my belly. "Elena!" Valerius sat up instantly, sensing my distress. "What is it? The baby?" "It hurts," I groaned, beads of sweat breaking out on my forehead. The pain intensified, radiating down my legs. "Valerius, something is wrong. It burns." Valerius sniffed the air. His eyes widened in horror. He grabbed the empty glass from the nightstand. He sniffed it. Then he smashed it against the wall. "Wolfsbane!" he roared. The sound was so loud it shook the bed frames. "Guards!" Wolfsbane, the deadly poison to all shifters. In small doses, it made you sick. In large doses, it killed. And for a pregnant wolf, it was a death sentence for the pup. "Get it out!" I screamed, clutching my stomach as another wave of agony hit me. "Help him! Save the baby!" Valerius was over me in a second. He placed his hands on my stomach, his red eyes glowing frantically. He was trying to push his healing energy into me, but the poison was fast, too fast. I felt my throat closing up. I couldn't breathe. "Valerius!" I choked out. Darkness was creeping into the edges of my vision. The bedroom doors burst open. Royal guards rushed in, weapons drawn. "Get the healer!" Valerius shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "Now! If she dies, you all die!" But as the guards scrambled, I saw something. In the chaos, near the balcony door, a shadow moved. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a maid. It was a figure dressed in black assassin's gear. They were holding a small, empty vial. Valerius was too focused on me. He didn't see the threat. "Valerius!" I tried to warn him, but only a wheeze came out. The assassin raised a crossbow, a silver-tipped bolt, glistening with green liquid, aimed directly at Valerius's back. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My human body was failing, but my wolf, the white wolf, was not failing. She was furious. "Save him!" The command exploded in my mind. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the assassin's finger tighten on the trigger. I saw Valerius, his face buried in my neck, crying, pouring his life force into our child, completely unaware that death was standing 3 feet behind him. I didn't think. I reacted. With a strength that didn't belong to me, I shoved Valerius aside. I threw my body across the bed. Sudden impact. A sickening sound. The bolt didn't hit Valerius. It hit me, right in the shoulder. Valerius roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that shattered the windows. He spun around, catching the assassin in midair as they tried to jump from the balcony. I heard the snap of bones. The assassin didn't even scream. But I was fading. The pain from the poison in my stomach mixed with the burning silver in my shoulder. The room spun. I saw Valerius's face hovering over me. He was screaming my name, but he sounded like he was underwater. "Elena, stay with me! Look at me!" I tried to reach for him, but my hand fell limp. The last thing I felt was the baby giving one weak, terrified kick. And then, silence. The great hall was a sea of velvet, jewels, and judgment. Long tables made of ancient dark wood stretched endlessly under the light of crystal chandeliers that helped thousands of real candles. The air smelled of roasted venison, expensive wine, and thinly veiled hostility. Valerius led me to the high table. He didn't pull out the chair next to him, the one usually reserved for a consort. He pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the king's chair. "Sit," he commanded softly. "Valerius," I whispered, clutching his arm, "that's your seat. You can't." "I am the king," he replied, loud enough for the nearby nobles to hear. "And where my mate sits, the throne resides." He sat me down in the massive chair carved with howling wolves. Then he took the smaller chair to my right. The insult to the council was deliberate. He was putting me above himself, above the law. Opposite us sat Lord Blackwood, the head of the High Council, an old wolf with gray fur and eyes like flint. Next to him was Cassandra, looking like an ice sculpture in her white dress, her eyes burning with hatred. "So," Lord Blackwood began, not bothering to touch his wine, "this is the girl who has turned the kingdom upside down." "Her name is Elena," Valerius said, cutting his meat with lethal precision. "Elena." Blackwood tasted the name with distaste. "No family name, no lineage?" "I am from the Silver Moon Pack," I said, my voice trembling slightly before I steadied it. "My parents died in the War of the Rogues when I was a child." "An orphan," Cassandra scoffed, sipping her wine, "and a servant, from what I hear. Tell me, Elena, is it true you were rejected by a beta? Did he find you lacking?" The table went silent. This was a direct attack. In our world, being rejected was a stain that never washed off. It implied you were flawed. Valerius's knife hit his plate with a sharp clink. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Cassandra," Valerius warned, his voice low and dangerous. "It's a fair question, Your Majesty," Blackwood interjected smoothly. "If a common beta rejected her, why should the king accept her? We must think of the bloodline. The royal heir must be strong, pure." I looked down at my hands. The ruby necklace felt heavy, like a collar. They were talking about me as if I were a breeding mare, as if I weren't there. They think I am weak, I realized, just like Marcus did. But then I felt it again, the warmth in my chest. The baby moved, and with his movement, something else woke up. My wolf. She didn't just stir this time. She stretched. She pushed against the barriers of my mind. She wanted out. "I was rejected," I said, lifting my head. I looked directly at Cassandra. "Because my ex-mate was blind. He looked for a wolf and saw nothing, just like you are doing now." Cassandra laughed cruelly. We see nothing because there is nothing to see, dear. You have no aura. You are practically human. You are a pet the king picked up to warm his bed. Enough. Valerius stood up, his chair scraping violently against the stone floor. His red eyes flared. I will not have my queen insulted at my own table. Then prove she is a queen, Blackwood shouted, standing up as well. Show us her wolf. If she is fated to you, she should be an alpha, a Luna. But she is nothing. She is a dormant, weak thing. She is the white wolf, Valerius roared. The room erupted in laughter. The white wolf? Cassandra cackled, wiping tears from her eyes. That fairy tale, Valerius? Really? You made up a legend to justify mating with a servant? Valerius looked ready to kill, his claws extended, gouging the wood of the table. He was about to shift. He was about to massacre his own council. Valerius, stop. I stood up. I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I just spoke. But my voice, it sounded different. It sounded like two voices speaking at once, one human, one ancient. The laughter died instantly. I felt a heat spreading from my chest. It wasn't painful. It was glorious. It felt like standing in the center of a supernova. You want to see my wolf? I asked, looking at Blackwood. I closed my eyes, and I let her go. Show them, I whispered to the presence inside me. Effects. High-pitched ringing sound, wind howling inside the room. The candles in the chandeliers flared up, the flames turning from orange to blinding blue. The windows rattled, the wine in the glasses began to boil. A light burst from my skin. It wasn't a shift, my bones didn't break. Instead, a spectral form exploded from my body. A massive wolf, made of pure, translucent white light, materialized behind me. It stood 10 feet tall, towering over the high table. Its fur rippled like starlight. Its eyes were not red like the king's. They were blue, electric, glowing blue. The spectral wolf opened its mouth and let out a silent roar that hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Lord Blackwood fell backward in his chair. Cassandra dropped her glass, shattering it. She screamed, covering her face, as if the light burned her. "The spirit wolf," a guard whispered, dropping his spear to kneel. The giant wolf lowered its head, nuzzling my shoulder. I opened my eyes. They were glowing with the same blue light. I looked at Cassandra. She was trembling, pale as death. "You called me a pet," I said. My voice echoed, amplified by the power of the wolf. But pets do not command the elements. Pets do not carry the favor of the moon goddess. I looked at Valerius. He was the only one standing. He wasn't afraid. He was looking at me with pure, unadulterated worship. Tears were streaming down his face. "My queen," he whispered. I turned back to the council. "My name is Elena," I announced. "I am the mate of the Lycan King. I am the mother of the future ruler, and I am the white wolf." The spectral wolf faded slowly, the light dimming back into my skin. The candles returned to normal. The room was plunged back into semi-darkness, but the silence was different now. It wasn't the silence of judgment, it was the silence of fear. Lord Blackwood scrambled to his feet. He looked at me, then at Valerius. He bowed, lower than he had ever bowed to the king. "Forgive us, your majesty," he choked out. Cassandra didn't bow. She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. But deep in those eyes, the calculation was gone, replaced by pure terror. She knew in that moment that she had made an enemy of a god. Valerius took my hand and kissed it. He said, "Dinner is served," smiling at the terrified room. "I hope you all have an appetite, because the new era has just begun." The royal suite was larger than the entire pack house I had grown up in. Valerius kicked the double doors open and carried me inside. The room smelled of lavender and crushed rose petals. A fire roared in a fireplace made of white marble. The bed was a vast island of silk and velvet, big enough for 5 people. But Valerius didn't take me to the bed. He walked straight to the bathroom. It was a sanctuary of gold and steam. A sunken tub carved from a single piece of black onyx was already filled with steaming water. "Put her down," a sharp voice clipped from the doorway. An older woman in a severe black uniform marched in, followed by 3 younger maids. She looked at me with open disdain. "We will scrub her, Your Majesty. She is filthy. Look at the mud on your jacket. Disgraceful." Valerius growled, a low, vibrating sound that made the water in the tub ripple. "Careful, Martha," he warned. "You are speaking about your queen." Martha sniffed. "She is a rogue until the council ratifies the union, sire, and currently she smells like wet dog and fear. Leave her to us. We will make her presentable." I shrank back against Valerius's chest. The way Martha looked at me reminded me of Marcus, of every person who had ever told me I was nothing. Valerius looked down at me. He saw the panic in my eyes. He turned to the head maid. "Get out." Martha blinked. "Sire?" "I said, get out," Valerius commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Leave the towels, leave the oils, and get out. Anyone who touches her without her permission loses a hand." The maids scrambled backward, bowing hastily before fleeing the room. Martha gave me one last hateful glare before closing the heavy door. Silence returned, just the crackle of the fire and the sound of water. "I can wash myself," I whispered, though my hands were shaking so bad I could barely undo my buttons. "I know you can," Valerius said softly. He stepped closer. "But for 19 years, you have served others. You have scrubbed floors and cleaned wounds. Tonight, you are the one who is served." He reached out and gently unbuttoned my dirty sweater. His fingers were hot against my cold skin. He peeled the wet fabric away as if he were unwrapping a priceless gift. He didn't look at my body with lust. He looked with reverence. He traced the old scars on my arms, reminders of harsh chores and punishments. "They will pay for every mark," he promised darkly. He helped me into the water. The heat was shocking, stinging my cold skin, but then it settled into a blissful warmth that seeped into my bones. Valerius knelt beside the tub. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing muscular forearms covered in ancient runic tattoos. He took a sponge and dipped it in the scented water. He washed my back, he washed my hair. He was so gentle, so careful, that tears started to fall into the bathwater. "Why are you crying?" he asked, pausing his hand. "Because no one has ever taken care of me," I sobbed, tying into the bathwater. "I was always the one taking care of everyone else." Valerius dropped the sponge. He cups my wet face in his hands. "That life is over, Alina. You are my mate, my equal, my life." After the bath, wrapped in a robe made of clouds, I sat before a vanity mirror framed in gold. Valerius had called for a dress. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement. It was white, pure, shimmering white silk that flowed like water. Gold embroidery of wolves and vines climbed up the bodice. "White," Valerius said, standing behind me as I looked at the gown, "the color of the moon goddess, the color of the rarest wolf." "It's too much," I breathed. "Cassandra was wearing white. She'll think I'm copying her." Valerius laughed darkly. "Cassandra wears white to hide the darkness of her soul. You wear white because it is your nature. Put it on." When I stepped out of the dressing screen, Valerius stopped breathing, literally. The air left the room. The king of lichens, the monster who terrified nations, stood there with his mouth slightly open. His red eyes flared, glowing so bright they illuminated the dim room. The dress hugged my curves, accentuating the small bump of my pregnancy. My hair, now clean and dried, cascaded down my back in silver blonde waves. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the servant girl. I didn't see the reject. I saw a queen. "My God," Valerius whispered. He walked over and stood behind me, looking at our reflection. He looked dark, dangerous, and lethal in his black royal uniform. I looked like light made flesh. "You are breathtaking." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside lay a necklace, a choker of diamonds with a single massive red ruby in the center, the teardrop of blood. "This belonged to my mother," he said, fastening it around my neck, "the heart of the lichen." I touched the cold stone. "Valerius, I'm scared. The council is downstairs. Cassandra is downstairs." "Let them look," Valerius growled, burying his face in my neck, inhaling my new scent of rose and power. "Let them see what they can never have." He offered me his arm. "Are you ready to take your throne, my love?" I took a deep breath. I felt the baby kick again, a strong, solid thump. I lifted my chin. I am ready. We walked out of the suite. The guards at the door snapped to attention, their eyes widening as they saw me. We walked down the grand staircase towards the great hall. I could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices, the clinking of glasses. At the bottom of the stairs, the royal announcer stood with his staff. He looked at Valerius, then at me. He bowed lower than he had before. He struck the floor with his staff 3 times. Boom, boom, boom. The doors to the great hall swung open. The noise inside cut off instantly. Every head turned, every eye fixed on the top of the stairs. His Majesty King Valerius, and Her Majesty, the announcer paused for effect, Queen Elena. We stepped into the light, and for the first time, I didn't look down. I looked straight ahead, straight into the shocked eyes of Cassandra, straight into the calculating eyes of the council. I smiled, and the room held its breath. I must have fallen asleep in the back of the limousine, lulled by the hum of the engine and the warmth of Valerius's chest. When I opened my eyes, the sun was rising. But it wasn't rising over the muddy forests of the Silver Moon territory. It was rising over a city of glass and gold. "Wake up, my queen," Valerius whispered, his voice deep and rumbling against my ear. "We're home." I sat up, blinking. Through the tinted windows, I saw we were crossing a massive bridge. Below us, a river raged. Ahead of us, I gasped. The royal palace wasn't a house. It was a fortress carved directly into the side of a mountain. Towers pierced the clouds, and waterfalls cascaded down the stone walls into the valley below. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying. "I don't belong here," I whispered, the old fear gripping my throat. I looked down at my clothes, a stained, oversized sweater and muddy leggings. "Valerius, look at me. I look like a beggar." Valerius took my chin in his hand, forcing me to look at him. His red eyes burned with intensity. "You are not a beggar. You are the vessel of the White Wolf. You carry the heir to the throne. These walls?" He gestured to the massive castle approaching. "They were built to protect you." The convoy slowed down as we approached the main gates. They were 50 feet high, made of iron and silver, adorned with the crest of the royal lichen family, a wolf wearing a crown of thorns. As the cars passed through, I saw them. Hundreds of wolves, guards in golden armor, servants in silk uniforms, nobles in tailored suits and ball gowns. They lined the driveway, waiting. "Why are they all here?" I asked, shrinking back into the seat. "They are here to see the woman who captured the king," Valerius said dryly. "News travels fast. The council has probably been awake all night plotting." The car stopped at the foot of the grand staircase. A footman opened the door. "Her Majesty, the Queen," the footman announced, his voice booming. Valerius stepped out first. The crowd bowed so low their noses almost touched the pavement. He turned and offered me his hand. I hesitated. Every instinct in my body told me to run, to hide. A lowly Omega like me walking on red carpet? It was unnatural. But then I felt the baby kick, a tiny, barely perceptible flutter. Do it for him, I told myself. I took the king's hand and stepped out. The silence was deafening. Hundreds of pairs of eyes fixed on me. I could feel their judgment. I could smell their disdain. To them, I smelled like a rogue, like mud and fear. Valerius sensed my panic. He wrapped a possessive arm around my waist, pulling me into his side. He released a wave of alpha pheromones that rolled over the crowd like a fog, forcing them to lower their eyes. "Welcome home, my king," a voice cut through the silence. A woman stepped forward from the line of nobles. She was stunning, tall with cascading blonde hair and eyes the color of ice. She wore a white dress that looked like it cost more than my entire pack's land. She didn't bow as low as the others. "Cassandra," Valerius nodded, his tone cool. "I see the council sent their favorite daughter to greet me." "We were worried," Cassandra said, her eyes flicking to me. Her gaze raked over my dirty clothes with surgical precision. She curled her lip in disgust. "Oh, Valerius, always the joker. Look at her. She has no wolf scent. She is human, or worse, a defect. Tell me, little girl, do you even know which fork to use at a royal banquet, or are you used to eating from a bowl on the floor?" Tears pricked my eyes. It was Marcus all over again, just with better clothes. But before I could answer, Marcus moved. He didn't strike her, he didn't shout, he simply grabbed Cassandra by the throat and lifted her off the ground. The crowd gasped. Guards stepped forward, but stopped instantly when Valerius flashed his red eyes at them. Cassandra clawed at his hand, her legs kicking in the air. "Valerius," she choked out, "I am a duke's daughter." "And she," Valerius said, his voice deadly calm, "is the mother of my heir. If you disrespect her again, I will not strip you of your rank, Cassandra. I will strip you of your head." He threw her to the ground. She landed in a heap of white silk, coughing and gasping for air. "Get her out of my sight," Valerius commanded the guards, "and tell the council I will see them in the throne room in 1 hour. If they have objections to my mate, they can make them to my face." Valerius turned to me. The rage in his eyes vanished instantly. "Are you all right?" he asked, brushing a stray hair from my face. "She hates me," I whispered. "They all hate me." "They fear you," Valeria corrected. "They fear change. And you, my love, are the biggest change this kingdom has seen in 1,000 years." He picked me up in his arms, ignoring the stares of the court. "Come, let's get you a bath and clothes befitting a queen. Tonight, we dine with the wolves, and you need to look like the predator you are destined to be." As he carried me up the marble stairs, I looked back over his shoulder. Cassandra was still on the ground, watching us. Her eyes weren't filled with fear anymore. They were filled with calculation. I knew then that Marcus was just a bully. Cassandra, she was a hunter, and I was the prey.
"The hunt?" Marcus choked out the words, his face pale against the dark wood floor. "My king, please! I am a beta! I have rights under the Lycan Council laws!" Valerius tilted his head, looking down at the trembling man with mild curiosity, as if he were a bug he hadn't decided to crush yet. "Rights?" Valerius mused, his voice echoing in the silent hall. "You stripped your mate of her rights when you threw her out like garbage. You stripped your unborn child of his birthright. And now you want to quote laws to me?" The king took a step back and spread his arms wide. The air around him shimmered with heat. "I am the law," he roared. The sound cracked the plaster on the ceiling. "I am the council, and in my court, betrayal is punished by blood." Sarah, who had been trying to inch away, let out a terrified sob. Valerius's eyes snapped to her. "And you," he said softly, "the other woman, the Gamma's daughter." Sarah threw herself at the king's feet, grabbing the hem of his trousers. "My king, I didn't know. Marcus told me she was a surrogate. He said the baby wasn't his. He promised me I would be the Luna of this pack one day." Marcus stared at her, betrayed. "Sarah? We were supposed to rule together." "Shut up!" she screamed at him, her mask of elegance completely gone. "You lied to me. You said she was nothing. You almost got us all killed." Valerius looked at me on the throne. A small, cruel smile played on his lips. "You see, my queen, their love was as fragile as their loyalty. It breaks the moment fear enters the room." I looked down at them.
Yesterday, these two people were the gods of my world. They determined if I ate, if I slept, if I had a roof over my head. Now, they looked pathetic, small, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear. I felt pity. "Valerius," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the pin-drop silence, it carried like a bell. The king turned to me instantly. The monster vanished, replaced by the attentive protector. He walked up the steps of the dais and knelt on one knee beside the throne, bringing his head level with mine. "Yes, Elena? Do you wish for their heads? Say the word, and my guards will decorate the walls." The pack gasped. Alpha Stephen looked like he was about to faint. I looked at Marcus. He was crying now, snot running down his nose. He looked at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. "Elena," he whispered, "please, remember when we were kids? Remember the treehouse?" He was trying to manipulate me, trying to use our childhood friendship before he presented as a beta and I as an omega to save his skin. I touched my belly. "I remember," I said softly. "I remember that you promised to protect me, and I remember that you dragged me through the mud while our son's life was at risk." Marcus flinched. "I don't want them dead, Valerius," I said, looking at the king. Valerius raised an eyebrow. "Mercy? They do not deserve it." "No." I shook my head, a newfound strength rising in my chest. My wolf. I could feel her. She was white and she was angry. Death is too easy. If they die, they don't have to live with the shame. They don't have to see what I become. Valerius smiled. It was a terrifyingly proud smile. He kissed my hand. "Wisdom fits you, my queen." He stood up and turned to the crowd. "Alpha Stephen." "Yes, my king?" Stephen scrambled forward. "Your beta is broken." He pointed at Marcus. "He lacks honor, loyalty, and basic instinct." Valerius's eyes glowed red. "Strip him." My king?" "Strip him of his rank," Valerius commanded. "Burn his mark. From this day forward, Marcus Thorne is an omega. He will clean the latrines. He will eat last. He will not speak unless spoken to. And if he ever looks at my queen again, I will tear his throat out myself." Marcus screamed as if he had been physically struck. To be demoted from beta to omega was a fate worse than death in our world. It was total social erasure. "And you," Valerius said softly, "the other woman, the Gamma's daughter." She threw herself at the king's feet, grabbing the hem of his trousers. "My king, I didn't know. Marcus told me she was a surrogate. He said the baby wasn't his. He promised me I would be the Luna of this pack one day." Marcus stared at her, betrayed. "Sarah? We were supposed to rule together." "Shut up!" she screamed at him, her mask of elegance completely gone. "You lied to me. You said she was nothing. You almost got us all killed." Valerius looked at me on the throne. A small, cruel smile played on his lips. "You see, my queen, their love was as fragile as their loyalty. It breaks the moment fear enters the room." I looked down at them. Yesterday, these two people were the gods of my world. They determined if I ate, if I slept, if I had a roof over my head. Now, they looked pathetic, small, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear. I felt pity. "Valerius," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the pin-drop silence, it carried like a bell. The king turned to me instantly. The monster vanished, replaced by the attentive protector. He walked up the steps of the dais and knelt on one knee beside the throne, bringing his head level with mine. "Yes, Elena? Do you wish for their heads? Say the word, and my guards will decorate the walls." The pack gasped. Alpha Stephen looked like he was about to faint. I looked at Marcus. He was crying now, snot running down his nose. He looked at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. "Elena," he whispered, "please, remember when we were kids? Remember the treehouse?"
He was trying to manipulate me, trying to use our childhood friendship before he presented as a beta and I as an omega to save his skin. I touched my belly. I remember, I said softly. I remember that you promised to protect me, and I remember that you dragged me through the mud while our son's life was at risk. Marcus flinched. I don't want them dead, Valerius, I said, looking at the king. Valerius raised an eyebrow. Mercy? They do not deserve it. No, I shook my head, a newfound strength rising in my chest. My wolf. I could feel her. She was white and she was angry. Death is too easy. If they die, they don't have to live with the shame. They don't have to see what I become. Valerius smiled. It was a terrifyingly proud smile. He kissed my hand. Wisdom fits you, my queen. He stood up and turned to the crowd. Alpha Stephen. Yes, my king? Stephen scrambled forward. Your beta is broken. He lacks honor, loyalty, and basic instinct. Valerius's eyes glowed red. Strip him. My king? Strip him of his rank, Valerius commanded. Burn his mark. From this day forward, Marcus Thorne is an omega. He will clean the latrines. He will eat last. He will not speak unless spoken to. And if he ever looks at my queen again, I will tear his throat out myself. Marcus screamed as if he had been physically struck. To be demoted from beta to omega was a fate worse than death in our world. It was total social erasure. And you, Valerius said softly, the other woman, the Gamma's daughter. She threw herself at the king's feet, grabbing the hem of his trousers. My king, I didn't know. Marcus told me she was a surrogate. He said the baby wasn't his. He promised me I would be the Luna of this pack one day. Marcus stared at her, betrayed. Sarah? We were supposed to rule together. Shut up! She screamed at him, her mask of elegance completely gone. You lied to me. You said she was nothing. You almost got us all killed. Valerius looked at me on the throne. A small, cruel smile played on his lips. You see, my queen, their love was as fragile as their loyalty. It breaks the moment fear enters the room. I looked down at them. Yesterday, these two people were the gods of my world. They determined if I ate, if I slept, if I had a roof over my head. Now, they looked pathetic, small, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear. I felt pity. Valerius, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the pin-drop silence, it carried like a bell. The king turned to me instantly. The monster vanished, replaced by the attentive protector. He walked up the steps of the dais and knelt on one knee beside the throne, bringing his head level with mine. Yes, Elena, do you wish for their heads? Say the word, and my guards will decorate the walls. The pack gasped. Alpha Stephen looked like he was about to faint. I looked at Marcus. He was crying now, snot running down his nose. He looked at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Elena, he whispered, please, remember when we were kids? Remember the treehouse? He was trying to manipulate me, trying to use our childhood friendship before he presented as a beta and I as an omega.
Inside the Silver Moon pack house, the celebration was in full swing. The music was loud, a thumping bass that vibrated the crystal chandeliers. Champagne flowed freely. Marcus held court in the center of the room, Sarah clinging to his arm like a trophy. They were laughing, actually laughing. To the future, Marcus toasted, raising his glass high, and to trimming the fat from our pack. To the future, the warriors echoed, clinking glasses. Nobody mentioned Elena. Nobody mentioned the pregnant girl they had just sent to die in the freezing storm. It was as if I had never existed, as if 10 years of service meant nothing against the word of a beta. Alpha Stephen sat on his velvet throne at the head of the room, looking bored but satisfied. He liked order, and exiling a weak omega was, in his mind, restoring order. Good riddance, he muttered to his gamma. I don't need weak bloodlines cluttering up my infirmary. Suddenly, the music faltered. It didn't stop because someone turned it off. It stopped because the air in the room changed. The heavy oak doors at the entrance didn't open. They exploded. Sound effects, massive wood splintering sound, silence, gasps. Splinters of wood and twisted iron flew across the polished floor. The music cut out instantly. The laughter died in everyone's throats. A wind, cold and smelling of rain and ozone, swept through the warm hall. Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. And then, heavy footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. Through the ruined doorway, a figure emerged from the shadows. King Valerius. He looked like a god of vengeance carved from marble. His suit was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, but it only made him look more terrifying. His red eyes scanned the room, glowing like burning coals in the dim light. But what made the breath catch in everyone's throat wasn't the king himself. It was what he was carrying. Me, Elena, the reject, the exile, the wolfless runt. I was wrapped in his massive suit jacket, my muddy feet dangling, my head resting against his chest. I looked small, frail, and utterly broken, and he looked ready to murder everyone in the room for it. Alpha Stephen was the first to react. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. King Valerius? Stephen stammered, his face draining of all color. We weren't expecting a royal visit. If we had known— Kneel. The word wasn't shouted, it was whispered, but it carried the weight of 1,000 years of alpha dominance. It hit the room like a physical shockwave. Every wolf in the hall dropped to the floor. Warriors, elders, women. They didn't have a choice. Their wolves forced them down in the presence of the apex. Even Alpha Stephen scrambled off his throne. Falling to his knees hard, I heard the bone crack against the stone. My king, Stephen wheezed, head bowed low. Forgive us. Only Valerius remained standing. He walked through the sea of kneeling wolves, his boots clicking on the marble. He didn't look at them. He walked straight to the dais, straight to the Alpha's throne. He didn't sit on it. That would be too simple. Instead, he turned gently to me. Are you in pain, little mate? He asked, his voice soft enough that only I and the silent room could hear. I'm okay, I whispered, though I was still shivering. Valerius looked at the velvet throne. He looked at Alpha Stephen, who was trembling on the floor nearby. This seat, Valerius said, his voice dripping with disdain. Is it clean? Yes, my king, of course. Good. Valerius leaned down and placed me gently on the throne. He sat me, the Omega, the servant, on the seat of absolute power in the pack. He arranged the jacket around my shoulders, making sure my pregnant belly was covered and warm. He treated me like porcelain, like the most precious thing in the universe. Then he turned around, and the tenderness vanished. The monster returned. He stood in front of me, acting as a shield between me and the pack. He crossed his arms over his massive chest. Who is Marcus? The name hung in the air. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Near the buffet table, a man was trying to crawl backward, trying to hide behind a decorative pillar. Sarah was already sobbing silently into her hands, her makeup running down her face. I said, Valerius roared, the sound shaking the windows in their frames. Who is Marcus? Alpha Stephen pointed a shaking finger. There, behind the pillar, get him. Two of Stephen's own warriors, desperate to please the king, grabbed Marcus and dragged him into the center of the room. They threw him at Valerius's feet. Marcus looked pathetic. His expensive suit was rumpled. He smelled of fear, acrid and sour. My king, Marcus blubbered, refusing to look up.
This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know she belonged to you. She lied to me. She said, Silence. Valerius took one step forward. Just one. Marcus flinched as if he'd been kicked. Look at me, boy, Valerius commanded. Marcus slowly lifted his head. His eyes met the glowing red gaze of the Lichen King. He whimpered. You rejected her, Valerius stated. It wasn't a question. She is wolfless, my king, Marcus stammered, trying to find some logic. She is weak, an omega, and she is pregnant with a bastard child. I am a beta. I have a reputation to uphold. The pack laws state clearly that... Valerius laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Reputation. He crouched down, invading Marcus's personal space. You threw a pregnant female into a storm. You denied your own flesh and blood, and you think you have a reputation? Valerius stood up and turned to the crowd. He says she is wolfless, Valerius announced to the room. He says she is weak. He looked at me on the throne. Elena, my queen, would you like to tell them the truth, or shall I? I looked at Marcus. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at me with wide, horrified eyes. I remembered the years of torment, the extra chores, the mockery. I took a deep breath. The warmth of the king's jacket gave me courage. He lied, I said clearly. My voice didn't shake this time. He knows the baby is his. He just wanted Sarah because her father is the Gamma. Sarah gasped. I didn't know. He told me the baby was a rogue's. Enough. Valerius silenced them with a wave of his hand. He looked at Alpha Stephen. Stephen, you are the alpha here. You allowed this. Stephen was sweating profusely. My king, I relied on my beta's judgment. Marcus said she was defective. Defective, Valerius repeated the word. He walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Do you know why I am here, Stephen? Do you know why I left the royal palace? No, my king. Because my seers told me that the white wolf had been born. Gasps filled the room. The white wolf, the rarest of all shifters, a creature of legend said to possess healing magic and strength that rivaled the royals. There hadn't been a white wolf in 3 centuries. I have been hunting for her for months, Valerius continued. I tracked her scent to this territory, and what did I find? He gestured to me. I found the white wolf shivering in the mud, rejected by a beta who isn't fit to lick her boots. Marcus's eyes bulged. He looked at me, really looked at me. Her? That's impossible. She doesn't even have a scent. Because she is dormant, you fool, Valerius snarled. Her power is protecting the pup. Once the child is born, her wolf will awake, and she will be stronger than you could ever dream of being. Valerius turned back to Marcus. You rejected the white wolf. You rejected the future queen of lichens. And you rejected my adopted son. The king smiled, and his canines extended fully. I think it is time for a new game. It's called The Hunt. And Marcus, you are the prey.
I pressed my back against the rough bark of the oak tree, trying to merge with the shadows. My breath came in shallow, terrified gasps. Red eyes. Legend said that only one kind of wolf possessed eyes the color of fresh blood, the lichen, the royals. Monsters among monsters. They were stronger, faster, and infinitely more cruel than any regular alpha, and they never, ever came to the outskirts of the Silver Moon territory. The man walked toward me. He didn't rush. He moved with the predatory grace of an apex hunter who knows his prey has nowhere to run. The rain lashed against his expensive suit, but he didn't seem to notice. As he got closer, the scent hit me. It wasn't the smell of wet dog or musk that the pack warriors carried. It was intoxicating, like storm clouds, dark chocolate, and burning cedar. My dormant wolf,
the one everyone said didn't exist, the one Marcus had mocked for being dead. She stirred. For the first time in 19 years, I felt a flutter in my chest. Not of fear, but of recognition. Mate. The word whispered through my mind, soft as a ghost. I shook my head violently. No, that was impossible. I was a defect. I was pregnant with another man's rejection. I couldn't be the mate of him. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he was terrifyingly beautiful. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, covered in a shadow of stubble. A scar ran vertically down his left eye, vanishing into the collar of his shirt, hinting at violence I couldn't imagine. He looked down at me, shivering in the mud. His nostrils flared. He inhaled deeply, taking in my scent and the scent of my misery. "Who did this to you?" His voice was a low rumble, vibrating in the ground beneath me. It wasn't a question, it was a demand for a name to put on a tombstone. I couldn't speak. My teeth were chattering too hard. I just stared at his shoes, polished Italian leather now sinking into the grime. He took another step. I flinched, curling into a ball to protect my stomach. "Please," I sobbed, the word tearing from my throat. "Don't hurt us." The movement stopped instantly. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the giant of a man lowered himself. He didn't care about the mud ruining his trousers. He dropped to one knee, bringing his face level with mine. The glowing red in his eyes dimmed, swirling into a deep, molten crimson. "Hurt you?" he repeated, sounding genuinely confused. "Little wolf, I would burn this entire forest to ash before I let a single raindrop harm you." He reached out. His hand was massive, easily twice the size of mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a blow, expecting him to finish what Marcus started. But his touch was a feather against my cheek. His thumb brushed away a streak of mud and tears. Sparks. Literal electric sparks shot through my skin where he touched me. The cold of the storm vanished, replaced by a searing heat that radiated from his core. "Open your eyes," he commanded. It was an alpha command, but laced with a softness that confused me. I obeyed. I looked into the abyss of his gaze and saw my own reflection. "You are freezing," he noted, his brows knitting together in anger, not at me, but for me. He started to shrug off his suit jacket. I have nothing to give you," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I am a rogue. I have no wolf. I have no value." He paused, the jacket halfway down his shoulders. He leaned in close, his nose brushing against my neck. He inhaled again, a long, possessive drag of air. "You have value," he growled against my pulse point. "You are my soul. You are the other half of my spark. You are my queen." Queen? The world spun. Was I hallucinating from hypothermia? But then he pulled back and looked down. His gaze landed on my hands, which were still fiercely clutching my lower belly. He went still. The air around us grew heavy. The static electricity in the air spiked. He smelled it. He heard it. The second heartbeat. This was it. The moment he would kill me. Male wolves didn't raise other males' offspring, especially not royals. They wiped the slate clean. "I'm sorry," I blurted out, panic rising in my throat. "I didn't know. I'm pregnant. It's a mistake. I'm leaving. I won't burden you." He didn't speak. His face was unreadable, a mask of stone. He reached out again. This time, his hand moved toward my stomach. I tried to pull away, but I was trapped against the tree. "No, please," I begged. "Don't hurt him." The movement stopped instantly. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the giant of a man lowered himself. He didn't care about the mud ruining his trousers. He dropped to one knee,
bringing his face level with mine. The glowing red in his eyes dimmed, swirling into a deep, molten crimson. "Hurt you?" he repeated, sounding genuinely confused. "Little wolf, I would burn this entire forest to ash before I let a single raindrop harm you." He reached out. His hand was massive, easily twice the size of mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a blow, expecting him to finish what Marcus started. But his touch was a feather against my cheek. His thumb brushed away a streak of mud and tears. Sparks, literal electric sparks, shot through my skin where he touched me. The cold of the storm vanished, replaced by a searing heat that radiated from his core. "Open your eyes," he commanded. It was an alpha command, but laced with a softness that confused me. I obeyed. I looked into the abyss of his gaze and saw my own reflection. "You are freezing," he noted, his brows knitting together in anger, not at me, but for me. He started to shrug off his suit jacket. I have nothing to give you," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I am a rogue. I have no wolf. I have no value." He paused, the jacket halfway down his shoulders. He leaned in close, his nose brushing against my neck. He inhaled again, a long, possessive drag of air. "You have value," he growled against my pulse point. "You are my soul. You are the other half of my spark. You are my queen." Queen? The world spun. Was I hallucinating from hypothermia? But then he pulled back and looked down. His gaze landed on my hands, which were still fiercely clutching my lower belly. He went still. The air around us grew heavy. The static electricity in the air spiked. He smelled it. He heard it. The second heartbeat. This was it. The moment he would kill me. Male wolves didn't raise other males' offspring, especially not royals. They wiped the slate clean. "I'm sorry," I blurted out, panic rising in my throat. "I didn't know. I'm pregnant. It's a mistake. I'm leaving. I won't burden you." He didn't speak. His face was unreadable, a mask of stone. He reached out again. This time, his hand moved toward my stomach. I tried to pull away, but I was trapped against the tree. "No, please," I begged. "Don't hurt him." The movement stopped instantly. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the giant of a man lowered himself. He didn't care about the mud ruining his trousers. He dropped to one knee, bringing his face level with mine. The glowing red in his eyes dimmed, swirling into a deep, molten crimson. "Hurt you?" he repeated, sounding genuinely confused. "Little wolf, I would burn this entire forest to ash before I let a single raindrop harm you." He reached out. His hand was massive, easily twice the size of mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a blow, expecting him to finish what Marcus started. But his touch was a feather against my cheek. His thumb brushed away a streak of mud and tears. Sparks, literal electric sparks, shot through my skin where he touched me. The cold of the storm vanished, replaced by a searing heat that radiated from his core. "Open your eyes," he commanded. It was an alpha command, but laced with a softness that confused me. I obeyed. I looked into the abyss of his gaze and saw my own reflection. "You are freezing," he noted, his brows knitting together in anger, not at me, but for me. He started to shrug off his suit jacket. I have nothing to give you," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I am a rogue. I have no wolf. I have no value." He paused, the jacket halfway down his shoulders. He leaned in close, his nose brushing against my neck. He inhaled again, a long, possessive drag of air. "You have value," he growled. I, Marcus Thorne, future beta of the Silver Moon Pack, reject you, Elena Vance. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My heart didn't just break, it shattered into dust. The mate bond, that golden thread that had hummed in my chest for the last 3 years, snapped with a violence that made me gasp for air. I fell to my knees on the cold marble floor, my hands instinctively clutching my stomach. "Marcus, please," I whispered, my voice trembling. I looked up at him, searching for the boy who had promised to love me forever just last night. But that boy was gone. In his place stood a stranger with cold, steel-gray eyes and a sneer that twisted his handsome face into something ugly. "You don't mean that. It's me. It's Elena." "I know exactly who you are," Marcus spat, his voice echoing off the high ceilings of the ceremonial hall. "You are a wolfless runt, an omega who can barely scrub floors, let alone stand by my side as a beta female. I need a mate who is strong, someone with a wolf." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. The entire pack was there, warriors, elders, even the pups. They formed a circle around us, their faces twisted in amusement. To them, my heartbreak was just Tuesday night entertainment. "But we are fated," I tried again, tears blurring my vision. "The moon goddess chose us." "The moon goddess made a mistake," a sharp feminine voice cut in. Sarah. She stepped out from the crowd, looking immaculate in a red silk dress that hugged her curves. She walked up to Marcus and looped her arm through his. He didn't pull away. In fact, he leaned into her touch. "Marcus needs a real woman," Sarah smirked down at me, "not a charity case the Alpha took in out of pity." I looked toward the throne at the end of the hall. Alpha Stephen sat there, swirling a glass of amber whiskey, watching the scene with boredom. He wouldn't help me. In the Silver Moon Pact, might made right, and I was the weakest thing here. "Marcus," I said, my voice dropping to a desperate whisper. I had to tell him. I had to tell him before he threw me out. I'm pregnant." The room went silent. The laughter died down, replaced with a tense hush. Marcus froze. For a second, just a split second, I saw a flash of panic in his eyes. He looked at my stomach, hidden beneath my oversized, worn-out sweater. "What did you say?" he hissed. "I'm pregnant," I repeated, louder this time, a spark of hope igniting in my chest. "We're going to have a pup, Marcus. You can't reject me. The law says—" "Liar!" The scream didn't come from Marcus. It came from Sarah. But Marcus was the one who moved. He stepped forward and backhanded me across the face. The force of the blow sent me sprawling across the floor. I tasted iron, blood. "You dare you!" Marcus roared, his face turning red. "You think you can trap me with a lie? You think you can pin some rogue's bastard on me to save your pathetic skin?" "It's yours," I cried, shielding my belly. "I have never been with anyone else. You know that." "I know nothing of the sort," Marcus sneered, wiping his hand as if touching him had dirtied him. "You smell like trash, Elena. You probably let some wandering rogue take you in the woods just to feel special. My child would be strong. My child would have a powerful aura. That thing inside you, it feels like nothing. It's as weak and wolfless as you are." He turned to Alpha Stephen. "Alpha, I request that this traitor be exiled. She is trying to deceive a ranked member of the pack." Alpha Stephen stood up slowly. He walked down the steps of the dais, his heavy boots thudding ominously. He stopped right in front of me. He sniffed the air. "He's right," the Alpha grunted. "I smell fear. I smell weakness, but I don't smell a pack air." "Please, Alpha," I begged, grabbing the hem of his pants. "Check again. The baby's just hidden. It happens sometimes. My grandmother told me." Alpha Stephen kicked my hand away. "Enough. Marcus has rejected you. As of this moment, you are a rogue. You have 1 hour to clear out your locker and leave my territory. If I find you on my lands after the moon reaches its peak—" He leaned in, his eyes flashing orange.
My warriors will hunt you, and they haven't eaten fresh meat in days." The pack cheered. Actually cheered. They were howling, stomping their feet, chanting Marcus's name. I looked at Marcus one last time. He was kissing Sarah, his hand on her waist, completely ignoring the girl he had impregnated and discarded. I stood up. My legs were shaking so badly I thought I would fall again, but I locked my knees. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of dragging me out. "You are making a mistake," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the sudden lull of the crowd it carried. "All of you, you think I am nothing, but the moon goddess does not make mistakes, and one day you will beg for the forgiveness of the wolfless runt." "Get out!" Marcus screamed, throwing a glass at me. It shattered against the wall, inches from my head. I turned and ran. I burst through the heavy oak doors and into the night. The rain hit me like a physical blow. It was freezing, a torrential downpour that soaked through my thin clothes in seconds. The wind howled through the trees, mimicking the howls of the pack inside the warm house. I had nothing. No money, no phone, no family. Just the clothes on my back and the tiny, fragile life growing inside me. I ran toward the forest border. I knew the woods well. I had spent years hiding in them to avoid the bullies. But tonight, the woods felt different. They felt darker, predatory. I walked for what felt like hours. The cold was seeping into my bones. My human body couldn't withstand this temperature much longer. Hypothermia would set in soon. "I'm sorry, little one," I sobbed, rubbing my belly as I huddled under the roots of a massive ancient oak tree near the highway. My vision started to blur. Black spots danced in front of my eyes. I was going to die here, an unmarked grave for a forgotten girl. But then, through the sound of the rain and the wind, I heard something else. The hum of an engine, tires crunching on wet gravel. A light cut through the darkness, 2 beams of blinding white light. A car had pulled off the highway and stopped just a few yards from my tree. Who would stop in the middle of nowhere in a storm like this? I held my breath, terrified it might be the pack warriors coming to finish the job early. The car door opened. A figure stepped out. A man. Even in the dark, even through the rain, I could see he was massive. He didn't run for cover. He stood there, unmoving, as if the storm bowed to him. He turned his head slowly. He looked directly at the tree where I was hiding. And then 2 points of crimson light pierced the shadows. Red eyes. Not alpha eyes, not beta eyes. Something else. Something ancient. Something terrifying. He took a step toward me.